in Saskatoon, because over the years it has seen many different incarnations, shall we call it, to the day that now it is a mall, it is residential apartments, and it has an excellent roof garden too. And we come down into the mall area, which is also the heritage exhibition area, and I think reflects great credit to the current owners of the building in that there's a reproduction of the notables who are seen on the outside of the building. And also there are interpretive plaques, not only referring to those people, but also to the many phases of Saskatoon's history and heritage and the people who contributed to it. Yes, the first of our interpretive plaques and the photograph portrait both refer to John Clarence Drinkle, arguably Saskatoon's first and most prominent entrepreneur, who arrived here with a half share in $500 in 1903 and in a decade became the city's wealthiest man and certainly an entrepreneur who was active in at least 4 different areas of business. And when we move into the main corridor of the mall, which is also the main display area for the heritage interpretive plaques, we go past 1903 Saskatoon, the last Best West, with its collection of what would politely be described as commercial shacks on what is now 1st Avenue, looking from 20th Street. You see the typical false fronts of the era over what are really just slightly adapted residential designs. And here one on Drinkle's businesses. He was involved in telephones, he had a laundry, Saskatoon's first steam laundry. The furniture business was at one time massive, and he devoted a whole floor of the other building to this. And real estate, which is really where he first made his fortune, buying agricultural land and reselling it to farmers. After 1911, when his businesses were well established and in fact were on the verge of turning down, Drinkle had made so much money that he was able to establish himself and his family in London, England, where apparently they lived in very high style. And before Drinkle himself came back to take a more active hand in the management of his businesses, which by the end of the First World War were teetering on the brink, his elder brother would run those businesses from Saskatoon and kept in touch with Drinkle by telephone and cable from Drinkle's then base in London, England.
Is this his home here in Saskatoon?
This is indeed Drinkle's home, which was built in Caswell Hill and was in fact one of the marvels of Caswell Hill at that time. The original home was demolished in 1977 and replaced by the Kelsey Apartments in that area. And here we have a view of 22nd Street after the construction boom had run its course and after the street obviously had been paved. Now the horse-drawn carts are replaced with relatively early motor cars, and although this picture does not appear to be dated, it would look as if it's from the mid-20s. And here another view from the top of the Ross building, which used to be located across the street from Drinkle number 3 building in which we stand. And this shows the extent of construction in Saskatoon in 1913, which marks the beginning of the downturn, which took building permits, for example, from the record figure of over $7.5 million in 1912 to just over 20,000 by 1915. And coming up here, we have the photographs of all three of Drinkle's buildings. Two of them have been demolished, but Drinkle number 3, in which we are now standing, is from 1930, the picture. Not very different from the Drinkle building of today, though of course the businesses have changed and the building generally has a much livelier appearance, despite the fact that it only ever reached 5 stories. Drinkle's original plan was to have it built 10 stories high, but when the economy started collapsing in 1912 and 1913, a lot of buildings in Saskatoon were either simply abandoned as projects or were cut back in the number of floors that were built. I think the most dramatic cutback was in the Wilson building, which came from a 6-floor design down to a 1-floor construction. Drinkle number 2 was demolished in the 1980s, and Drinkle number 1 served as the first home of the University of Saskatchewan, which was held in 2 buildings, which occupied 2 rooms on the top floor. And the boast among the students at the time was that they were the only university in Canada which had an elevator for personnel.
Thank you for joining us as we've watched another episode of Yes, Gargoyles Do Live in Saskatchewan. My name is Audrey Price, and I'm the Provincial Coordinator for the Architectural Heritage Society of Saskatchewan. I want to tell you a few things about us, about what we do to help keep our built heritage for our future generations. We're a nonprofit society supported by SaskCulture and Saskatchewan Lotteries, whose main focus is to be the catalyst for education and preservation of Saskatchewan's built heritage. We do this by offering membership in the society to individuals and various organizations across Saskatchewan. We publish the Heritage Quarterly magazine, which highlights stories about Saskatchewan people and their efforts to preserve our built heritage. Members are encouraged to contribute articles and receive the publication as a benefit of their membership. We provide financial incentives to members through grants for the express purpose of keeping our built heritage for future generations. This series is also a part of that process of sharing with Saskatchewan people all the wonderful stories and the places those stories happened in.
Thanks for watching another episode of Yes, Gargoyles Do Live in Saskatchewan.